considering I'm a Wuthering Waves player who has recently just started playing Punishing Grey Raven and have been having a blast with it. Very first time I played it, it was the end of a long stream. I was chatting with stream and I really didn't pay attention to what was going on, and I thought the combat system was it was all right. Just wasn't really for me. And then I played it again and I was like, okay, let's take some time. Let's try to start learning the game. And I really like the combat system now. It's actually pretty fire. I've still got so much to learn. I'm still new to the game. But let's see what this dude's got to say about the game, shall we? Sunil, I think it is. Punishing Grey Raven is a masterpiece. Let's check it out. This is an older video, but I want to see what he's got to say about it as a new player. Let's see.
Alright, so Punishing Grey Raven, let's review it. It's a gacha game created by Kurogame, and by saying that, there's probably already a couple thoughts floating through your head on how you generally imagine it to be. As, to put it in the most angelic way possible, gachas are known to have fairly alright gameplay. Art that's basically trying to redefine the body anatomy of humans, or rates that make you question why numbers can go that low.
All true, all true.
For whatever reason, they have some of the best music I've ever heard. Now I'm gonna keep it 100. Yep.
What is that with gacha games? So many gacha games have absolute banger soundtracks, like absolute banger soundtracks.
Boy has played a fair bit of gacha games, and although the ones I play are already good games, gachas are known to be slightly above the bare minimum of what makes a game good, whilst having
sometimes as well, slightly above the minimum of what actually constitutes as a video game as well. They're usually just gambling systems with slight bits of gameplay attached to them. One of the big reasons, well, of Genshin Impact, and I love the Wuthering Waves, it's a whole game with a system attached to it, and that's a really good thing. One thing I will say before we get into it as well, that I think that Kuro are definitely stepping up the combat side of things, in my opinion. I think, in my opinion, at the moment, I really like the PGR combat. Wuthering Waves is my favourite combat within the gacha space, and I'm hoping that we get more games that go down that line of really stepping it up in the combat space and, you know, having some nuance, complexity, and some, you know, overall difficulty added to the combat as well.
Immense gambling in them. That's how like 60% of them are, which is why I wanted to make a review of Punishing Grey Raven, because I believe this game is a masterpiece.
Okay.
It's not even something
Big words, big words.
I only recommend to those looking for a good gacha game to play. I would recommend this game to anyone looking for a good action game to play. Now, of course, we're like 30 seconds into this review and I just dick rode the game like a professional horse racer. So let me explain as to why I think Punishing Grey Raven is a masterpiece. And the best place to start is with talking about its gameplay. Now, when it comes to gameplay in gacha games, as I said, most of the time, it fucking sucks. It's usually some auto battler or some gameplay that is as close to being auto as I am to being gay. That's just what we've come to expect from the genre, which is why I'm happy to say that Punishing Grey Raven's gameplay is, yeah, it's pretty good.
It's actually kind of fucking epic in a way. It's so anime, you know what I mean? And I know I say that about Wuthering Waves as well, but it really, really is. It's cinema, you know? Dude, I was going to say that edit goes hard as well.
Do what I do best. Have a breakdown of the gameplay.
Let's go.
You got a team of 3. There's the DPS slot, the tank slot, and the lift slot. In a battle, you could swap to the other.
The live slot, I like it.
The members are do what I do and forget they exist. You also have an arrangement of skittles above your attack button. Generally, you want to make it so all 3 skittles are lined up. From there, you press 1 out of the 3, all 3 are consumed at once, and your character does a move. That's called a 3-ping. 3-pings improve the stats of your move, and if the color of it corresponds to your ally's color, then you can do a QTE. That's where your ally comes in and the 2 of you recreate that one scene from Jujutsu Kaisen. Later on during the fight, you'll have your ultimate be generated, which is...
It's like, it was kind of like, that's what I like about going to PGR as well. Now, you see some of the systems that would eventually become systems in Wuthering Waves, like how the QTE is kind of like a tagging kind of system. It's kind of like the beginnings of an intro-outro system, which is one of the big factors of why I like Wuthering Waves, among a lot of other things, but I love that about the game. It reminds me of the system in Snowbreak as well, which obviously Snowbreak came later, so it was inspired by this. I just played that game first. You can kind of do a similar sort of thing in Snowbreak as well, in that regards of bringing a player in to do a move while you're still on field without swapping out to them, which is kind of cool. Solo leveling and Rise does kind of a sort of similar sort of thing as well, doesn't he?
Just some strong move to pop out. However, there is this one tiny little mechanic called matrix dodges. If you perfect dodge an enemy's attack, then you will slow down time, look like a badass, and any orb you ping will count as a 3 ping. So it's optimal to use it on single orbs. In doing so, you can probably clear one of the way to then have a 3 ping to pop. That's the gist of the gameplay. Now comes the hard part, the core passives, which is where the gameplay really opens up. And requires mandatory reading, but yeah, I'll forgive them for that part. To put it simply, characters have different core passives, which is how they
I think the core passives where like the game really starts to get some extra nuance to it, isn't it?
The core passives differ per character, and you'll need to understand it to play that character correctly. For example, Alpha's core passive can basically be boiled down to pop a blue 3 ping, then pop any 3 ping. From there, all your orbs change into this attack, so Mario Party mash that shit. The early characters have something pretty simple for their passive. However, Gen 2 characters, which I'll get into later, have more to their core passives. So remember how Alpha's was? Yeah, this is the core passive of the character who's gonna replace her, and the one you should be rolling for if you're a new player. Now, this is a lot of reading, but take this from someone who's illiterate, it isn't that hard to understand. That's due to the in-game tutorial you can play.
Dude, where it gets difficult, and seems to be a Kuro thing, that they make kits look way more complicated than what they are because of all the jargon in terms of the terms they use for all the different abilities. They do it in Wuthering Waves, and like sometimes something that's really simple, it seems really hard to digest, especially for a smooth brain like me. When I'm looking at it, I'm like, what are even all these things they're talking about? And I have to go back a few times. Oh, okay, that's all right. Okay, that's that ability. Right, I get that now. It takes a while. It takes a while.
All characters have one, and they do a great job of breaking down how the character is meant to be played. And you can play it without needing to own the character, so it exists as a great trial area for them.
It's great that
if you're
actually
unsure about rolling for them. So even though this looks like a lot, in practice you'll get used to it and begin to master that character. And the core passes display what I think is so good about the game. Since they have a lot to them, that means the characters actually play different. They aren't just different looking characters that deal a different damage type who you can most.
This is one thing I really like about Wuthering Waves as well. This is a thing that goes into Wuthering Waves. The characters play different. Where I like Zenless Zone Zero, and there is a difference, but it's a lot more subtle. Like there's a lot more variety in what I've seen so far in PGR, and definitely in Wuthering Waves in terms of like skill expression and the way you go about combat.
Autopilot in the same way. Since they all play different, you could keep the gameplay fresh as hell by simply playing a different character. And believe me, you'll get the ability to play every character in the game. They basically drown you with opportunities to try everyone out. In some gachas, you need to set up a full-blown VR rig to watch a YouTube video on a character's gameplay to somewhat get a feel for how they play. And Punishing Graven Kurogame is tying you down and waterboarding you as they force you to learn every single character's gameplay, which is a base thing to do, honestly. I really appreciate not feeling like the enjoyment of the game is locked away from me. And fuck, there's a lot of enjoyment to find in the combat. If you wanted to play solely for it,
There really is. Like I say, I'm super new to the game, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing for the most part. I'm still even trying to navigate myself around, like, the menus, when it comes down to, like, mats and what I'm specifically doing and all that sort of stuff. That new feeling with the gacha game, especially when I stream as well. I find it hard to ingest information. I get a little bit overwhelmed. But the combat, man, I'm having such a blast with it.
You'd feel rewarded, especially considering how good the OST is. I can be fighting a Pringles can, but it'd make that shit feel like a fight ripped from Demon Slayer. Over the course of a fight, you're pressing your orbs, lining them up, playing your characters optimally, mashing out your QTEs, triggering Matrix, managing your dodge resources, using your signature optimally, and during all of this, you're hearing orchestral rock playing in the background as the enemy is outputting the equivalent to a weeb's wet dream. Well, granted, if that's
it really is a weeb's wet dream. As I said, this game is as anime as it gets, and I'm here for that, man. I'm here for it.
It's a weeb's wet dream, yeah. Some of the shit these characters can do will leave a weeb looking drained. And on the note of Matrix dodges, I like how they make the combat not feel linear. The game doesn't boil down to a simple swap in character, hit this ping to this ping to this. Since you won't have a very static rotation, as what you will be doing will depend on what you got at that moment. And from there,
that is true. Where like the way that the ping system works, it kind of randomizes things, doesn't it? So you're not always going to be doing, which is different to Wuthering Waves. You're not always going to be doing a specific rotation. Then of course you can always switch things up in a game, but you kind of lean into doing the thing that works, don't you? Where with this, you you have to work with what you get in the way you get it and optimize it as much as possible, which I think is a really interesting system.
Matrix dodges help to make you face more questions of what is best to do at this moment. Stuff like that is fundamental for gameplay not being on rails. The more times you need to think about what's best to do as you're dodging the enemy makes you have more moments of enjoyment, at least to me. Also, in case this is all looking like a pain to play daily, don't worry, the game has a sweet function, we chillin'. Now I do want to say one thing, I don't believe the game is soul-crushingly difficult. For example, I cleared up to chapter 17 of the game, and for the main story I was generally able to just use one character without needing to swap to complete it. So if you want to just enjoy the main story, then you won't have to worry about getting destroyed.
Yeah, so far, I've been having no issues, apart from when I've got to the butler for the first fight. Dude kicked the shit out of me that very first fight. I went back and kicked his head in the second time, but dude did, you know, dude slapped me about a little bit in that first fight.
However, if you want some difficulty, then holy shit is the game ready, willing, and desperately wanting to give it to you. Take the event that happened prior to this review. There was a part of it where you were able to buff up the enemies. You could choose no buffs or a shit ton, fully up to you. The more buffs you choose, the more rewards you get. You can create a Mickey Mouse game, some Chuck E. Cheese ass playground for you to fight in. Or you can make it soul-crushingly difficult for no reason whatsoever. The question is, how much of a masochist are you? And the choice is yours. The game's in a state to where if you want to play casually and chill through the main story, you can. I mean shit, against one story boss, I took 9 minutes to kill it and died 21 times. Okay. In my defense, my game was bugged, but I'll get to that later. The reason I was able to get deleted 21 times as I was streaming the game, mind you, is because for story bosses, you could get revived mid-fight against them and still finish it with 3 stars. Which may make the game sound easy, though again, if you want a challenge, it ain't hard to find. It's just that the soul-crushing shit is kept mostly away from the main story so more casual players can enjoy it. And on that note, let's talk about the story. So lay down and let me give you the laid down.
Let me go into the story for me personally so far. Start at the very, very start, when the game's like you literally start the game off. Felt a little bit painful. It wasn't so much the way the story is presented, just felt a little bit painful in how the game got you into it initially in that first 15, 20 minutes. So I've had a lot of people come into my streams and in my comment section, saying that the story at the start, it's a bit rough. I've kind of been enjoying it so far, actually. I suppose I'll probably be getting a bit more enjoyment because I'm streaming. I'm just reading the characters. I'm just having fun with it kind of thing. Like, doing my terrible attempts at VA. They're not VA attempts. It's just me being a fucking idiot. And I think that's kind of made me enjoy it a little bit. I'm feeling a connection with like the writing in a sense. It's nothing spectacular. It's nothing groundbreaking, but I've just been having fun with it. But I think when it comes to stories, I am very forgiving. I'm quite easily pleased in stories, especially anime style stories. As long as it's kind of flashy and over the top and kind of camp, I'm cool with that because like that's the sort of anime I like anyway. Don't get me wrong, I like my more dark, gritty, like really deep story stuff, but I'm here for that stuff as well.
Down. People lived in a golden age. There were no borders, no wars, and technology was improving daily. But it's a gacha game storyline, so things naturally went to shit. Here's what happened. Humanity wanted to harness zero-point energy. In case you don't know what that is, here's a Wikipedia page on it. Whilst doing tests for it, a reactor caught technology AIDS, also known as a punishing virus. The punishing virus is capable of turning machines crazy and making them want to murder all of humanity. Whilst if a human gets it, they experience cellular breakdown. In short, they die in a very painful way. Now see, the funny little thing about the virus is that, it's airborne. So pretty much every machine caught it, went ballistic, and waged war against humanity. Now when it comes to how humanity fared against the machines in the war, I'ma put this in the most elegant way possible. Them motherfuckers got hoed. Deadass humanity got bitched quickly. From there, the elites of society, the people high up in governmental ladders and such, ran off of Earth to a space station known as Babylonia. This was made as a relay point for spacecraft and was meant to explore space. However, due to the fact that they got clapped hard as hell on Earth, it's now used as a last stand for humanity. Basically one of the very few truly safe places left. And a fair bit of years after the virus turns Earth into a hellhole comes you, the player character. You are
in like for me, I know the premise is kind of tropey in the post-apocalyptic viral outbreak. It's almost like a zombie story, but it's machines. That's one trope, man. I love that trope. I do. I'm always here for a bit of post-apocalyptic, viral destruction and how we go about things after. I really like the premise of the story. I do.
Charge of the Grey Ravens, a team comprised of robots with you as a human commander. Now, You may question what I just said, as naturally it seems pretty idiotic to make a team of robots combat a virus that turns robots into killing machines. However, these robots are called constructs. Through methods that often border on torture, humans had their minds placed into these metal bodies. Their consciousness is stored in there and the act as soldiers, able to beat back the machines. However, to make it so that they are not turned into some Five Nights at Freddy's killing abomination, a human is assigned as the commander of the squad. Since the virus cannot take control over a human's mind, the commanders exist to connect with the machines and prevent their minds from being taken over. And that's basically the gist of the scenario for the plot. In case you couldn't tell, this story loves sci-fi shit a whole lot. Oh, and it was also heavily inspired from Nier and Nier Automata. I mean shit, yo, look at Ayla. She's basically a Nier character. Oh, and I suppose there's also all of them being in the game too, but yeah, we can ignore that. With the boring basics out of the way, I'm gonna break down what makes the story.
So you can definitely tell Kuro like their sci-fi, don't they? You know, their sci-fi fantasy. I'm here for that because sci-fi fantasy, two of my favorite things in the world.
Work. Most gacha games focus on building their cast wide. They introduce many different characters, and from there, they make people interested in them. However, making a large quantity of characters can sometimes cost quality, like how one of the best girls in Arknights is yet to get any lore after 3 fucking years of her being in the game. Yes, 3. Yes, I'm
Kuro, looking at you, looking at Calcharo. Make sure that doesn't happen to him as well. Your boy deserves some respect.
Still salty. Though that's a consequence when you want to build a wide cast of characters. You can't delegate time for each and every single character in that cast. However, Punishing Gray Raven doesn't introduce that many characters, at least by comparison to others in the genre. Instead, it focuses on building its cast tall, making it so the characters are more memorable. You can even see it in the gameplay. The characters have many different frames, which are just alternate versions of that character. So if you think Karenina is good, but you don't like the gameplay of her fire version, then guess what? You can use a version where she is a Mario Hammer Bro.
Yeah, I'm here for the variance in games like this.
I mean shit, you're basically always with the Grey Raven squad, so if you hated him, then that kinda sucked dick. In addition to the Grey Ravens, the story focuses on Strykehawk, which is comprised of daddy issues, sleep deprivation issues, and the issue of having no issues in the apocalypse. There's also Cerberus, composed of the furry insane asylum patient and the greatest waifu in the game, Vera. Now, I know Verasims have a reputation, but I will have you know that I am not one of those depraved and crazed simps. I am normal, and may have made an animated sticker in my Discord where Vera grabs the camera, but again, I swear I'm normal. Oh, and there's also Noctis.
It's like the pre-edition, the alpha of Scar almost, isn't it? You know what I mean? Almost even with I know they're more stars, but you know, almost kind of like a tacit mark, sort of, kind of, not quite, but still kind of Scar.
I suppose. When it comes to the writing in the game, I'm happy to say that it isn't a pain in the ass to read. After a couple of chapters, that is. Though there ain't no sugarcoating it, the word count of the game puts the Bible to shame, and I mean that in a per chapter way, not overall. But because it's written so well, I never really felt the length. Well,
yeah, I was gonna say, so far, like, I've been enjoying the writing. It's I think that, at least at the start anyway, the writing in this was for sure better than the early writing in Wuthering Waves. Now, don't get me wrong, it's got a whole lot better. And I think when Wuthering was actually staying focused to what it was doing, the writing wasn't bad anyway. It's just that it kind of like, it just didn't know what it was doing a lot of the time and just was like, you know, I don't know. It was unfocused. It was a lot of exposition dump sometimes, talking about stuff that I just didn't care about. Obviously, we know there was some translation issues and stuff, but like, I think when they're focused, it was better. And obviously, into 1.1 got vastly better. So we've had improvements there. But yeah, I think off the bat, the writing in this game is probably a little bit better.
When I was reading normally, that is, your boy kind of had to rush to get this review out on time. So there were times I went into a word coma. Though I'm glad I read it because the story is really good. It feels like every chapter, after some of the first ones, all served a purpose to build the storyline. It rarely feels like you're doing something unimportant in the story. The events and main questline serve to further the plot and world building, which is hard to talk about without going into spoilers, so I'll just say this. Chapter 17 is absolutely godlike, and when you finish it, you'll be glad for having read every prior chapter.
Okay.
Well, maybe not every, as I'd say the story only starts to get good around chapter 9, great in chapter 11, and then amazing in Echo Aria. From there, the quality of the story remains amazing, and especially the writing.
Well, that's good to hear.
I swear to God, they resurrected Edgar Allan Poe to make some of the poetry in this writing. Many times you'll see such elegant wording being used to describe a scene. They can probably use poetry to describe someone throwing up and make that sound like an artistic masterpiece. The writing is so good. in the later chapters. The first couple of ones are really boring. It's unfortunate you'll need to slog through those before it gets good, which is why I got some advice. In the description there will be a link to a site called grayravens.com. This site has story summaries that cover the boring beginner chapters, so I'd recommend using this site to know what happens up to chapter 8, then from there follow the patch list and read the stories that correspond in that patch. I'd say this is the best way to go through the story. And there's another thing I want to highlight about the story. It's that the player character is actually a Chad. I'ma keep it 100. In many games like this, the player character basically has the capability of a newborn baby while somehow having amnesia. But in Punishing Gray Raven, the player character contributes in combat with their special move, Galak. I ain't messing around. You can be fighting the biggest creature, the incarnation of despair, and the player character will dead pull its ass to the streets of Detroit and pop that bitch. I love it. And that may make the story sound like a power trip, but it does not shy away from beating your ass. Now, there do be a little dick riding, of that I can't deny, but it knows how to take you down a notch. The world doesn't feel like a hellscape you can.
To be fair, that's one thing that you'll find in all of these games. The main character gets glazed pretty much throughout majority of the games, don't they? They if you're not the chosen one, you're special in some other way. You know, it's a trope that most of these games have. It's kind of that's the whole point, isn't it? You're playing a waifu simulator. It's to give the person that sort of idea that they're like, you know, somehow they can vicariously live through it in a sort of way. You know, that like power fantasy of having a bunch of gorgeous women around you and think you're really fucking awesome, you know? It's pretty obvious.
Save. It feels like a hellscape you are trying to save. Again, it's hard to go into more details about it due to spoilers, so let's just talk about Despair Incarnate instead. The Gacha. The Gacha is actually fair. It's 60 pulls to guarantee a unit. Ignore the fact that the Fate banner exists. That shit is literally just there to claim your soul. Treat it like how I treat children. Don't question them too much, just ignore them. And as a free-to-play player, you might be able to get every single unit. The reason I say might is because on the CN version, there is enough time in between banners to where free-to-plays will be able to get 60 pulls. However, in the global version, there is less.
This seems to be Kuro's MO, doesn't he? You know, it's not a new thing that we see in Wuthering Waves, and obviously I've seen this from a lot of people anyway, because new to PGR, of course, doesn't make me a bad person, but a lot of people are, hey, dude, trust me, you don't know, this is just the way Kuro are, and I, from seeing it firsthand, I kind of can see that's kind of how they are, and it's at the detriment to themselves, I guess, because they could be making a lot more money. They're obviously doing well enough to continue this game service, and then to come up with the funds to be able to make something as expensive looking, even if you don't like it, as Wuthering Waves, because let's not pretend it probably cost a decent amount of money to make that game, because it looks pretty freaking good and it plays pretty good and it's quite expansive and it's got a lot going on and it wasn't cheap. I think that's safe to say. So, you know, they're obviously doing something right, whether they're keeping costs low and ROI is really good. Yeah, they seem to be able to continue being quite generous, which at the end of the day, as a player, it's good for us, isn't it?
Time in between banners, so it's possible you may need to skip a character here or there, especially if you miss out on the events. But let me tell you the optimal route.
It's just inevitable at the end of the day, isn't it? Real life happens and you'll miss a banner. You won't get enough currency to pull.
Then you'll spend the next 10 hours distracted for no reason in particular. From there, the game will give you 2 S-rank unit selectors for free. One selector will have a small pool of characters and the other will have up to Luna. Use the first one to get Live Luminance. Use the one that goes up to Luma to get Rosetta. From there, you now have the metaphysical team. That's all you really gotta do. Which is why this is the best time to get into Punishing Gray Raven. You're basically guaranteed to have a great team. You'll also get a free 6-star weapon selector. Use that to get Rosetta's 6-star signature weapon, Gungnir. Now you may want to hold on to your selectors until after you spend the 40 rolls on the game's beginner banner. It's just a standard banner, but you'll get an S rank and 40 pulls instead of 60 for the first time. If you get Rosetta from that banner, then I'd recommend getting Luna. She'll be power crept in a year, but she's the best choice. If you get Live Luminance from that banner, then use her selector to get Kamui, I suppose? It honestly doesn't really matter. However, if you do that,
I like him actually.
Metaphysical team. In a bit, Lee Hyperreal will release. He's the Meta Fire DPS. Get him. You'll need multiple teams. Then Lucia Crimson Weave will come out later. She's one of the best units in the game. And
yeah, people have said she's been power crept already, but I got her. I put her in as my selector, and I really like her. She's so much fun to use.
Best lightning DPS. Get her. As a new player, you'll be able to get all of these characters. On Crimson Weave's patch, you'll get another free S rank selector. Use that to get Vera Garnet. The Dami Mami is the best lightning tank. 2 patches after that, Furry 21 drops. She's the best lightning amplifier. Guess what? You now have two incredibly overpowered teams that will last you bare minimum a year before they are power crept. I mean, your Live Luminance will be power crept by Alyssa, but Alyssa's a free unit, so you don't need to worry about wasted pulls. So all it takes is a bit of time to wait, but if any free-to-play start now, you will have two meta teams. However, it's important to note that I generally wouldn't advise free players to roll on old units, as it's better to save those rolls to guarantee future units, because they'll just be—
Yeah, I was going to say, somebody was saying that in my chat the other day. There was like, you want to try and get yourself out of the typical mindset of just pulling. There was like, you know, you want to hold off a little bit. So I guess that's what he's talking about there. It makes sense.
Stronger. And don't roll for S-rank weapons. They aren't needed. The same goes for Cubs. And same goes for multiple copies of a unit. Just get the unit once. You don't need SSS. There are free ways to get to SS rank. That's all you really need for most characters.
I must admit, I know they're not quite the same, but I do like how you can rank up like B, A characters into S rank and SS. I think that's a cool little system, that is.
That's the optimal route to go and why you should start playing now. All in all, the gacha is very fair as free-to-plays will rarely be left in the dust. There is power creep, but it usually takes more than a year until a unit is crept, and even then free-to-plays will be able to get the new units. So I'm neutral about the power creep in the game. What I'm not neutral on is the new player experience. As a new player, there will be a lot of units you won't be able to get, and at first the combat's gonna be ass, as you will have to wait for the new units to release and be viable members for a party. For example, if you start after Crimson Weave and you get Furry 21, then she isn't a bad unit, but you need to get Crimson Weave to get the most out of her. And if you roll on an Anniversary or Standard banner to get Crimson Weave, then you run the risk of missing out on a future character, which causes your account to feel like it's locked until the new units make a good team.
Well, I've got Crimson Weave, so I'm happy there.
The beginner experience is still a problem, and on that note, let's talk about the problems of the game. So as I said, the story is amazing, but my lord would I have loved voice acting. I know the reasons why it isn't in the—
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure what his reasons why he knows. I'm assuming it's a budget thing, which makes sense. Voice acting's not cheap to get done. I know we've got some voiced lines, and I think they're great. I just think I said this earlier. In JP VAs never seem to miss, do they? They're always fire. But yeah, I must admit, I'd like to sit back and just enjoy it, but I don't mind if a game's got a smaller development budget. I'm totally fine with that budget going into making the game more fun in terms of playing. At the end of the day, we're playing a game and not watching a film. But it's always nice to have it, you know. But I'm not going to hold it against the game.
That being budget. But holy shit, would I love it so much. Cutscenes are voice acted, and some scenes outside of those are also voice acted. Moments like that are amazing, and having the game be voice acted would make reading it so much better. I already think it's an easy read, but voice acting would enhance it so much more. Maybe not all the chapters would get voice acted, but maybe some of the newer ones can. I'd love to see it. Another thing I have a problem with would be the bugs. As I've said, a really important fight was bugged for me. Shit kinda sucked. A really emotional moment had a music bug where I had two tracks playing at the same time, which did ruin the moment, but at the same time, that shit was kinda funny though. Yeah, I've
been lucky in regards to those sort of bugs so far in gacha games, and one of the major bugs I had was with Star Rail. I had to switch launchers actually, because I think I initially started Star Rail. I think I started on the, I can't remember if I started on the Epic launcher or the other way around, but I got to a cutscene. I think it was on the Lofu, I think it was, and it just started juttering, and I looked online and like loads of people have had this issue, and it just got to that point and it just wouldn't stop. I had to use a different launcher, and then ever since I've never had that issue. That's only like real major bug I've had in that regards in terms of like, not game breaking or gameplay orientated, because of course you get little bugs here and there, but like, you know, rather something that just like kind of ruined a moment in a game, because it did kind of like ruin that moment in that cutscene.
Gotta lie. There was a time where the residents of my dorm got Thanos sapped away for some reason, but I was able to ignore that as later on I was in a state of bliss. I was doing the thing I love most in this game, watching Vera step on things. Next thing I knew though, I was Jesus. Yeah, I don't know how this happened.
I had something like that happen on Terra Fantasy, actually. It was on, was it in Memoria? I can't remember where it was anyway, but like we was going through a quest where we had to like look in a mirror kind of thing to see what was doing in the future part, and you had to like pick the cubes in the right order, and if you didn't get it in the right order, you went into like a little domain expansion combat, and for some reason I wasn't able to dash out of the sphere of the orb, and then when it went away, it was like it was still kind of there, and I was just stuck on the edge of the map, and I had to restart the game. That's probably like the biggest gameplay bug I've had, really, if I'm honest. I'm quite lucky in that regard.
But I mean, at least I got to see Vera stepping on the clouds, so yeah, that's a win in my books. None of these bugs are game-breaking, but they do give a feel for a lack of polish. They won't ruin your experience, but they ain't exactly a joy to walk into.
Exactly,
So
bugs are just frustrating, whatever the fact, aren't they?
As it feels like the game is always improving.
It happens.
For example, the beginning areas look like a mutilated clone of a PlayStation 2 game.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about when the game very first started. This part here was just a little bit like, I was like, oh God, what is this? And I know the game's 5 years old and it's a mobile game. And I think so far, as I've got into the game, visually, it looks really good for what it is. You know, it does. I play on a 4090 on my PC game, and so I understand there's levels to this stuff. But for what it is, visually, I wasn't too mad about things. I think it looks good. But yeah, this bit here was a little bit like, whoa, what am I looking at here? This is a bit rough.
But later on, they start to look so good. They are beautiful. And I don't say this to mean that graphics are the end-all be-all. The gameplay's so good, I wouldn't care if it had the graphical fidelity of Pong. It's just an easy way to showcase the improvement of the game. It's also improved in making better bosses, the depth of the gameplay, and its storytelling. Punishing Grey Raven continues to improve, and I cannot wait to see where this game will go, which is why I rate it a 9 out of 10, which may be
That's a pretty decent rating, if I'm honest.
weird. As to me, a masterpiece is a 10 out of 10, but I'd still consider it as such with only being a 9.
I'm not going to lie, you know, I don't do reviews, but when I think of reviews, I think a 10 out of 10 is perfect. It's perfection. You know, it's Homelander saying it. It's perfection. And I don't think there's a game that's ever been made that's perfection. For me, I think the game that's probably come closest, in my opinion, was probably Red Dead Redemption 2. I think that came as close as you can get to that potentially. But even that for me, it's like, if I had to break it down, I'd say it's like a 9.9. Like, I've never seen a 10, and that's just because the way I rate it. To me, 10 is perfect, and I don't think anything's perfect.
Main reason it's a 9 is because
that's why I don't do reviews, all because my scale's stupid.
Getting in now fixes it, but closing your front door doesn't mean a hurricane just stopped happening outside. Which is why even though we are chilling now, it will always be a pain point when recommending the game, unless something is done to fix it. Of course, that isn't the sole problem I have with the game, but it's the biggest one. However, the gameplay, story, music, and free-to-play nature makes up for that fact and is enough for me to recommend it to anyone looking to play a good action game. There is a lot to love about this game, and I'm glad I decided to play this masterpiece. Though, they could do with making it so Vera gets another frame. She doesn't need it, but I desperately want it.
Hey, yo, that was a really good video, actually. I'm not that far in the game yet to really give that sort of viewpoint on the game, but I will say, I've been having a blast with the game. The combat's insane. I really like it. For me, still, Wuthering Waves is kind of the peak in just that's the sort of combat I like, that more free roam. I'm not saying this game doesn't have skill expression. It does. It definitely does. But it's just in a different way. You know what I mean? That's just my personal opinion. But I'm not taking anything away from the combat in this game. It's fire. Music slaps. I'm enjoying the story so far. I'm liking the character designs. And yeah, I've really been enjoying the game so far. And I'm going to continue to play it. And I can't wait to see the what I've got in store for me in regards to playing the game. Yeah, good video, and it do give the game high praises, and you know what, it's good to see. Do you know what, I've subscribed to him. I was giving him a preemptive sub. Sunil, I think. But yeah, it was a great video. That was. I really enjoyed that. Punishing Grey Raven is a masterpiece. I can't say that yet myself. The game is pretty fire, actually. I'm enjoying it.